Okay, so this will be a feedback slash critique for arrowwhy, or Roy, I guess. It doesn't look like there's anything particular suggest or requested. It's just kind of like a hey, look at my feedback. What can I do differently? What can I improve on? Stuff like that. Before we start, the usual disclaimers. I'm just a nerd who likes Tekken, and I like Paul. He's pretty fun. It also helps that he's always been fucking top 5 in this game since since the inception of this game. Excuse me. Anywho, that's just a way to say of like, hey, look, the advice that I'm about to give is based on my experiences playing Paul, based on what I've seen other players play Paul, what they like to do, what works out, what doesn't, and a little bit of why some stuff works out and some stuff does not, right? However, I am by no means a professional at this game. I am by no means, a authoritative figure. I am just a fellow player who is just providing his 2 cents, right? Just kind of like, hey, look, here is some stuff to help you improve. It is by no means like a surefire method, but you build on you work on these foundations, you build these foundations, and it'll lead to more success in the future, right? It is by no means gospel. Take what I say with a grain of salt, but take it into consideration. Yeah. With that being said, let's get into it. So right at the start, like right here, you're backdashing, and you do the backsway in addition to that. When you're backdashing, try to avoid the backsways, right? You never know. I'm not sure if it's because you're trying to do the KBD input and then you're just getting the accidental backsway, or what if the backsway is on purpose, right? I think early on in your stages, you want to focus on trying to avoid building as many bad habits as possible, right? It's very easy to fall into some early on traps that we'll talk about later. The first one being is like this backdash stuff. Try to avoid having the backsway come out as much as possible, right? And especially during backdashing. You don't necessarily have to have perfect KBD, right? You can just do stair stepping or whatever. Whatever gets the job done, right? It's hard for anyone to look at someone who's just starting to play this game or who's still in like that early ranks and just go, yeah, I think you need to do perfect KBD. Don't bother playing until you do. I'm not trying to say that. What I'm saying is having an awkward random backdash or having an awkward random backsway pop up during your backdashes. If it's not on purpose, try to avoid that. Try to have your backdashes as clean as possible, because you never know when you're going to get hit by some stray move because you accidentally input backsway, right? Aim for the ideal. Try to practice towards that ideal. If it happens once in a while, that's fine. That doesn't matter. I'm just sort of giving you like a heads up, like, hey, I noticed this. Try to avoid doing that. If it happens once in a while, so be it, but don't let it become the norm, right? And that's going to be a running theme throughout a lot of my feedback. It is not necessarily like, how dare you do this thing? It's more about, I noticed that I see this little aspect of your gameplay. I don't know whether or not it's intentional. If it is intentional, more power to you. If it is not intentional, be on the lookout for this stuff, right? And so right here, we have when Corsical forward 3 is a busted move. That move is so goddamn amazing for everything it does. And one of the best features about it is that it's basically near unseeable, right? The move comes out in 20 frames. And technically 18 to 19 frames. But once you incorporate the backdash, you're looking at 2 to 3 extra frames, blah, blah, blah. It's like 20, 21 frames. That's really hard to fucking see, right? The general consensus is like, yeah, 20, 23 frames is where you want to like, is what's considered, the borderline of seeable. The thing about it is, if you're in a match and you have you're not expecting anything, you're going into a match with no expectations, and the opponent just suddenly throws out like a 20 frame move, right? That's really hard to fucking see, right? If you're on the lookout for it, if you're tensed up, you're primed and ready to react to anything, like the moment you see any bit of movement, you react to what you think is the proper option, then yeah, of course, it's going to be a lot easier to see, right? So if the opponent is ready for it. So the reason this is important is something like, you know, is something like when you have that little bit of extra, when you walk that little bit of extra distance and then do the quarter circle forward 3, it's giving your opponent time to react. As you progress in more matches with this Kazuya, you'll see that he's blocking a lot more of these. Granted, it's like the only thing you're doing out of roll dash, but that's a different story. The tool is powerful the less your opponent expects it, right? So try to give them as little wiggle room as possible, as little signal as possible that, like, hey, this move is gonna come out, right? Excuse me, fucking allergies. So try to clean up that input. This also goes for backsway. Backsway and, you know, quarter circle back, quarter circle forward. The backsway and the roll dash. The ideal is that you never want to see it, right? You never want to see it actually appear on the screen. It should look almost instantaneous, right? You want the fastest input possible. And that speed, having that hard to react to speed, is what really helps the strength of some of Paul's moves, like quarter circle back 4, quarter circle back 2, etc. Because the opponent barely has any time to react, they're a lot more susceptible to that, right? Once you have that down, and you're a lot more in control of your execution, then yeah, if you want to let it rock for a bit of extra range or some shit, more power to you, right? But the ideal should be you barely see the backdash. Like, it should not be a thing. This hampers your range, but I value the unpredictability and the speed of the input as opposed to just getting a bit of extra range, because the range can be overcome with a bit of, you know, spacing knowledge, right? So try to clean up this input as much as possible. This is such a powerful tool. You never want to be able to give your opponent any bit of wiggle room that they can possibly react to it. Nice. Good old down forward 2. So right here, you do down on him. You get a wall splat. Awesome. But what's the problem here? This wall splat doesn't look very clean, does it? So what happens when you go for a wall combo? You get a one-way ticket to Whiff City, right? And now the Kazuya can press nearly any button he wants, and then he's going to wall splat you. Be very mindful of your stage presence and your wall splats, right? The moment you see the wall splat, if you feel like you can see the side wall splat, right? It takes a bit of training to get used to. Like, it's not going to happen right away, but just be always on the lookout of, was the wall splat clean? Was it not? Etc. And if it's not, don't commit to the wall combo, right? Don't commit to any sort of button that extends your whiff recovery, that puts you in a bad spot, because now you whiffed a button and you're putting the round on a silver platter to handing it over to Kazuya and just being like, please punch the shit out of me for free, right? So be very careful with, all right, let me just autopilot my combos and enders and strings, right? Always, context is very important in any aspect of a fighting game, in any time in a round, right? So always be mindful of, okay, was my wall splat clean? Am I gonna whiff it? If you start to see the whiff, just kill it right away. Don't even commit to the backsway cancel, because that'll add more extra whiff recovery, right? No backsway move you do is gonna come out fast enough in time to beat whatever the Kazuya throws at you, right? So just be a little bit careful about that. So right here, this was really solid. So ignoring the whiff. So right here, your back is to the wall. You're facing a Kazuya who's a fucking Oki monster, because Bamco decides that, yeah, we'll just give this guy annoying ass Oki till the end of time, right? He does the move and you start sidestepping right away. Always remember that. Always be mindful of where your position is on the stage. If your back is to the wall, against any character, really, right? You never want to have your back to the wall. It's just not a fun place to be. But especially against Kazuya, because he's got a million tools that annoy the shit out of you, and you want to be able to backdash and have that wiggle room, that real estate to work with, right? So anytime your back is to the wall, just sidestep and sidestep, backdash out of the way. Readjust yourself so that your opponent's back is to the wall instead. Now, let's say context is important. Let's say the Kazuya starts doing his homing moves or whatever, right? Obviously, don't sidestep in that situation. You have to base it on sort of like a little bit of a read, a little bit of what your opponent is currently doing. You'll see some opponents just start backdashing away for whatever reason when your back is to the wall, right? So that's kind of like a free get out of jail free card. That's like all right, they're backdashing away. They're going to take some time to dash back into it for pressure. Let me start sidestepping and getting out of here as soon as possible, right? So just be mindful of the context of the situation, but always aim for that goal of, okay, my back is to the wall. Let me see what my opponent does. And the moment I think I can get out of here safely, just get the fuck out of there. So right here, right, you do standing 3, and you do it quite a bit. So you get 1, you get 2, you get 3, and then he should have died there with, a back 1-2 punish, but that's a different thing. So you've done 3 standing 3s in a row, and the Kazuya never ducked after any of them, right? I'm not the biggest fan of 3-2 and while standing 3-2 because they're very easy traps to get into. Nobody ducks them at the early rings. Everybody presses in between the string, and then they get counter hit launched, and it's ridiculous, right? But the moment you run into a player that just has a bit of Paul knowledge, and trust me, you will. You do not have to get very high in Tekken you don't have to get very far in Tekken to run into someone who's got like 1% Paul knowledge and just ducks 3-2 and while standing 3-2, right? I'm not saying this because you're not really doing this string that much, but just be very careful about that, and anyone watching, I guess. They are strings that do not jail and end in high, right? Do not let them become habits. But you did 3 in a row. The Kazuya is not ducking, so what does that tell you? He's not really on the lookout for the string, so maybe you can let the string rip. More importantly, he is not primed and ready to be on the lookout for a low, right? So I feel like right here in this situation, especially after this block down forward 2, where the Kazuya is still in like block recovery, he's not going to have that much time to like move around or do another move. Like if he does another move, you'll counter hit him basically. Right here should have been Corsical forward 3, right? This should have been the load because he's not going to be ready for it, and he's just not going to expect it, or even just back 4, right? Because he's just stand blocking. He's just being like, all right, I don't want to die to any mids. So right here, just be mindful, again, throughout the entire match, what is my opponent doing? But more importantly, what is my opponent not doing, right? They're not ducking, they're not sidestepping that much. Okay, maybe I don't need to use back 1 as much. I can maybe start to chip in with some lows, right? And then as the ebb and flow of the match like progresses, always be ready to adjust on the fly. Like, okay, I've done Corsical forward 3 a few times. He's starting to flash duck. Let me pester with some mids to punish him for that, right? It's always about that sort of give and take of there's never going to be like a straightforward just press these buttons in sequence and lead to victory. It's always like all right, this is not working out. Let me stop it for a little bit. Or maybe sometimes, all right, it's not working out, but I'm going to commit to it because I think this dude's the next one's going to work out. So always be mindful of that, right? So in this situation, he's not ducking after the 3, and he just keeps blocking all of them. That should have been after like the second or third one. Just do Corsical forward 3 and, hit him with it. Rip. It's kind of hard to react to. But like right after this one, right? Right here, be careful about autopiloting, right? You always gotta, once you're in that reset to neutral and you give the Kazuya some wiggle room to work with, if he's gonna start dashing in front of you, just block. Don't overcommit to any sort of like big move or big button. Even the 3. Because as you see here, because you combine it with your backdash, it comes out just too slow where the Kazuya is able to hit you out of it, and now you're dealing with all the Kazuya fun Oki bullshit, right? a tragedy. A tragedy. And this comes into like you go for the 3 again, right? This is gonna come down to, always practice patience, right? Just this Kazuya is very aggressive. Like, he's just throwing out every button that he can and hoping that it works out, right? Like, when you're doing all the 3s back there, he just presses down forward 2. Who presses down forward 2? Except someone who's just gonna panic, and they're just like, just get me out of this, just get me out of this. What that means is you're facing an opponent who's very vulnerable. If you just exert a bit of patience and then force them to press something that they shouldn't, they're gonna press it. And you should aim for those punish opportunities, right? Like right here, when you try to press the 3 again, you just die for it, basically. So just be careful about that, knowing when to like kind of pump the brakes. Yeah. Rip. Nice. That's something that just comes with like presence of mind as you get better. Like right here, this should have just been Death Fist, right? However, I agree with the general idea of what you did here. At the start of the round, just backdash, right? Don't it's I do the same thing, right? I get very greedy and I'm like, I think he'll press into it. Let me just press one of my counter hit launchers. And sometimes it works out, but a lot of times it doesn't, right? So until you know better, until you're like, I'm gonna reading rainbow this shit. I have the read on my opponent. This is it. Watch me LeVar Burton, right? Until you're in that mode, just backdash. Always backdash, always utilize movement. Try to go for any option you have in this game. Try to go for the option that offers you the most reward for the least commitment. A backdash seems very innocuous, right? It's just pressing back and you move out of the way. But the reward opportunity is very high, right? Like right here, the Kazuya whiffed a fat ass button that you could just Death Fist easily, right? Or more importantly, if the Kazuya does something that's really hard to deal with, like an electric or something, you're out of range for it. So it's like all you did was a backdash, and you never overextended yourself. You never put yourself at risk, and you gained so much valuable information from this Kazuya likes to press a lot of buttons, and I have a whiff punish opportunity here, etc., 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 right? And this is both movement and poking, right? So a lot of pokes and a lot of moves from Paul. You want to use the options that offer the least risk and commitment, right? Death Fist is fucking hilarious because, very few people punish it. But it's so commitment heavy, right? An opponent just sidestepping by a pixel and Death Fist whiffs, and then they just get to do whatever they want to you, right? However, a move like Core Circle Back 2, you can just press as much as you want, right? If they're sidestepping, be careful about that. But you can just keep pressing that button, and there's literally nothing the opponent can do, right? Obviously, they can do whatever. The point being is, you're pressing a move that achieves very similar results like a mid knockdown with high damage, but one leaves you at like -16 and locks you in place so that you basically have to take whatever mix-up your opponent does. The other puts you at -8 and still kind of locks you in place, but because of the pushback, the opponent's not going to have any time to really dash in and do anything, right? So you get to just basically press this button at no commitment and get to continue playing the game. And that should be the ideal of you utilize these tools that you never have to really commit because you're Tekken 7 ball. And you're just like, all right, I'm just going to keep doing it. And right. So be on the lookout for those opportunities. The priority number one should just be movement because it's a valuable skill to practice and understand. It's a tool you want to practice using so you get better at it. But then, you're Tekken 7 Paul, you have a bunch of moves that are basically like, just press me for free. If it works out, awesome. If it doesn't, oh well. Better luck next time, Chief. But don't worry, you're not punishable, so who cares? Yeah, so like right here, that was a situation where the extended range from the core circle forward 3 helped, but you didn't need to backdash into it, right? So you do dick jab. Like, you didn't need to backdash into it. After the dick jab, you could have done it, but like, see, here it works out, right? So it's fine. You extend the range a little bit. You chip in with him because he's not really ready for it. That's fine. So it really just depends on the situation of the opponent. But again, practice for the ideal that this thing is like nigh unseeable and you want to abuse that to your advantage. And then when you see like the opponent's like very scared, yeah, go for it. Extend the range a little bit, get that little bit of chip damage in, and move on. Oh man, and everything falls apart. Okay, so right here you do back 1-2, right? And then and then you follow up with 3-2. He presses into it, so it's whatever, right? I'm gonna say this once and try not to harp on this point too much. Back 1-2, wall standing 3-2, 3-2. God, like what else? That's like the main. Those are the main ones. There's like a few more, but who cares? They are non-jailing strings that end in highs, right? Try to avoid committing to them, right? The moves, even on block, right? If the opponent blocks back one, if they expect you to finish the string, they just duck the follow up, and Paul's whiff recovery is ass, and they'll just kill you for it, right? So be very careful. If it was on purpose and you're like, oh, he's gonna run into it, awesome, more power to you. But in the case that it's not, and you're just kind of pressing this button for whatever reason, just be very mindful of that, right? Don't let it become a habit, right? There's always that difference of I'm doing this strategy that is not necessarily recommended or doesn't really work out or is like a gimmick because I know my opponent can't deal with it and they're going to let me get away with it, versus I'm doing this strategy or gimmick because I'm kind of autopiloting and it's like my muscle memory is kicking in, right? So be on the lookout for that. Try to avoid doing that too much. Yeah, like if the opponent's failing to punish you properly, yeah, fuck it, let it rip. But yeah, that's fine. Let's just keep going. This is a bit of like matchup knowledge stuff, but anytime he does this move and you block it, this should be back 1-2, right? Now it's difficult online because fucking online lag will fuck up some punishes. It is what it is. Aim for the ideal. Always be on the lookout for this move. Always be ready to punish, because you can't. If the Kazuya just gets to keep pressing this button for free, trust me, he will. And there will be times that this move, random bullshit evasion, just like Paul's down forward 2, will just hit you out of it, and he gets a counter hit launch. Right? This move is annoying as fuck. Anytime, and it's every Kazuya player's like favorite. Like, oh, I don't know what to do in this situation. Down forward 2. So make sure you punish him for that. Make him regret relying on that move as a panic button. Rip. Nice. There you go. That's what I'm talking about. Oh, hey, nice. No commitment. Rip. Tragedy. Nice. Good punish. So that's gonna be another thing of like something you want to practice on, is as you learn and progress these strings, it's like you're like right here you could have launched the Kazuya for committing to wall standing 4-4, right? Even on block, like the pushback, there's not that much pushback, so you'd have easily hit him out of it. So just be very careful. Always just be blocking. Be ready for, because think about it, right? The entire time this Kazuya is just throwing everything he can at you, right? He's not doing wave dash mix-ups into wall. He's not doing wavy into wall standing 1+2. God, fuck that move. But so he's just someone who's just like, I'm just gonna throw everything at you and hope something sticks. And that should tell you as the Paul of like, okay, this Kazuya is just going to throw everything at me. Let me just tone it back, not overextend, and just block. And he's going to do something that I can punish. As you see here. Nice. Rip. I just find it so funny because like this Kazuya is doing like Man, people really just work on their combos, and that's pretty much it, huh? Like, this because he was just doing, like, fucking dash jab combos at green range. Like, hot damn. I'm pretty sure that's a mid-high string. Always duck that follow-up. Don't let him get away with that. I try not to, like, do too much, like, oh, learn this, here's this matchup specific punish, because you can just do that on your own, right? Just look up a punish guide and just be on the lookout for any popular moves. So just I'll talk about that later. But nice. Oh lord, yeah. How could I forget? You know, the back 1-2 3-2 stuff that also extends to forward 2-1. The just frame version. You did the mid, which is fine. Just be very careful about, like, make sure that when you use the forward 2 series, 2-1. Nobody, don't use 2-2. It's a whiff punish, right? Or you know that the opponent's not going to duck or challenge you, right? Or you know the opponent's going to duck, but their back is to the wall, so you do the mid option instead, and that shit's great. Because it's very, very easy for the Kazuya to just throw out a button, and then you just run into it because you're literally dashing right into the opponent. Just be very careful about that. Here, it worked. Oh, Lord. Here, it worked out, so it's like, whatever. Okay, so run this by me, right? You get the knockdown, which is fine. But then you do forward 4. Why? What is your reasoning here, right? Yeah, it's awkward for the opponent to challenge you, like they can't jab you out of it. But any opponent with like just one sidestep and you're just gonna sail harmlessly past them, or you land right next to them and then they just whiff punish you to death. Excuse me. I'm not gonna. I don't want to like harp on this too much. Just basically, when you're doing this forward 4, there are so many better options you could be doing, right? Like, if you have the time to forward 4 or trooper roll, you have the time to do Corsical back 1, force the Kazuya into some unfavorable position. You have the time to forward 1+2. You have the time to do Corsical back 4, etc., etc., etc. All of these moves are not necessarily godlike, right? It's not like you're +10 or some shit, but they leave you in a far better situation than this forward than trooper roll currently does. Because he blocks it pretty high. Like, trooper roll is super active, right? But look at, so he blocks it, like you see the block sparks or whatever right near the top. When that happens, that means the move is more than likely like -5 and you're in crouch, right? There are times where this move can even be plus. You know, the more meaty it is, the later they block the move, the more advantage you get. But like right here, so now you just put yourself at -5, force crouch against a Kazuya, right? So now your movement is limited, and the only way you can sidestep is up, right? So you can only sidestep left here, which means you sidestep into the wall. And the Kazuya can do whatever he wants, and you just have to take the mix-up. Why would you want to put yourself in that situation, right? So be mindful of, okay, in the situation where I'm doing this, do I have better options that leave me in a more favorable position that I'm not locked into? I have to take the mix-up. And try to do those as much as you can, right? Nice. Oh god, I love sidestep 3. Nice. God, up back 2 is so good. Oh lord. Alright, so like right here, why are you gonna Death Fist? Right? Every single round you've played, this Kazuya has never ducked like once, right? When his back is to the wall, you did 3 or 4 standing neutral whatever 3s in a row, and he never ducked once. So why here? Why now would he duck the Death Fist, right? And it doesn't matter because it's that weird Death Fist pushback that happens at the wall, so now you're fucking on the other side of the arena and they can't punish you. But now look at what happens. The Kazuya has all this room to move around. You're stuck at -17, so you're not going to have enough time to recover and then do anything to punish the Kazuya for moving around and sidestepping. And all your wall pressure is just gone, right? So, like, right there, granted, he's just on rails, but that's a different problem. So, like, now all your wall pressure is gone, and now you're going to commit to, like, forward 2 or something. And he doesn't punish you. But the main point being is you had better options to keep the Kazuya in place and maintain wall pressure for a little bit longer so that the Kazuya cracks at something, as opposed to, alright, I'm going to just do Death Fist, and then fuck it. Oh well, I didn't get my punish, but now you just lose all your wall pressure, right? Paul with walls is a fucking entirely different beast than he is in the neutral, right? Because in the neutral, in the open ground, Demo Man is a fucking meme. It is not some unseeable hell sweep. One backdash, the opponent doesn't even have to backdash. They can just be holding back and walking backwards, and Demo Man loses its clean hit, right? Should it be buffed or some shit? I'm not saying that. What I'm saying is this: is at the wall, the opponent cannot do anything. They can't just backdash and like backwalk, whatever, Demo Man. They have to take the mix up. So you need to maintain your wall pressure as much as possible. Don't just throw it away with a Death Fist. Condition them to be afraid of Death Fist first, right? Or be susceptible to Death Fist first, right? So condition them with throws, condition them with lows, and as they start, and as they're like, all right, fuck, he's doing lows. Like, God, I can't. Make them take the mix up. Don't just do 4, 5, 6 mids in a row, and when you see them never duck or do anything, that you never punish them, right? Don't just throw away your wall pressure, because Tekken 7 Paul's already an annoying ass character, and just, one of the just a really strong character. Tekken 7 Paul with walls is a whole different beast, right? It's like fucking Satan or some shit, right? So always maximize your options. Always maximize your advantages. Don't just, let me do one mix up, and if it works out, whatever, move on, right? That's rough. That's rough, buddy. Yeah, like right here, I think it was just too obvious, right? Because you just did your flashy mid with Death Fist, and then the opponent's like, alright, that didn't work out, so now he had the easiest read on you, or he's like, alright, he's gonna go for the low now, right? So, we'll talk about that later, but yeah, that's just kind of like, that's just how it goes. That's just something that comes with practice, right? Because there are gonna be people who fall for that. You're gonna dash in their face. They're gonna be like, "Fuck, it's gonna be Death Fist," and then they just eat the Demo Man. But there's also gonna be people who's like, "All right, I blocked one Death Fist, so the next thing is Demo Man," and they had the read on you. You were just too obvious with the timing, but we'll talk about that later. Let's just see how this goes. Nice, get him. Good shit. It works out. Nice. Okay. Oh god, this video is probably already way too long. Oh, it tells me how much time there is. Oh, that's crazy. Sorry, excuse me. I know I've been sniffling throughout this entire video. I really need some allergy medication or some shit. Alright. Neutral. Punishment / matchup knowledge, combos / Oki, and personal opinion stuff. Neutral. Man, there's a lot. The first thing is that your movement is too stiff. This goes more into like my personal preference stuff, but you want to be moving around a bit more, right? There's no point to like just mindlessly backdashing. But I think you could be experimenting with sidesteps a bit more. You want to be sidestepping throughout the match, not just because like you're on the lookout for a move, because when you do sidestep and then nothing, or sidestep block, or sidestep mid into like, standing 3 or something, this makes the opponent more susceptible to sidestep 3 for when you finally actually do the move, right? Think about it like this. What is your game plan? What is your goal? Right? And what are you doing to get to reach that goal? For example, like my goal a lot is to I like using sidestep 3 a lot. So I'll do a lot of, sidestep forward 1+2, sidestep neutral 3. You get from sidestep you can do 3-2 from if you do 3+4 because it's a command kill or whatever. But the goal being is that because in the past I used to just do sidestep 3 and I was very obvious with my timings, and it just really, really lowered the power of that move. The power of that move is that it's nigh unseeable. It's really slow, yes, but when you look at people who move around a lot and they're utilizing sidesteps and they make it very hard to read the timings, right? And then boom, they'll just do sidestep 3, get the counter hit, and then easy damage, easy damage, right? That's when you sort of realize like, oh, like yes, the move is slow, but you have a lot of options to mix up your timings and make it very hard for the opponent to kind of have that read, right? So try to utilize movement a bit more. Try to like make your opponent second guess, like, all right, he's gonna go for this move at this time. It's to help mix up your timings and also just so you get more used to the idea of moving around and you're not too stationary during the match. Other aspects of neutral: more low pokes, more, especially more importantly, just kind of like less low pokes that take forever to come out. Like, again, you never want to give your opponent that sort of wiggle room of like, oh, I can see the roll dash, I can see the corsical forward happening, let me block just in case, or just start doing the low parry, right? Excuse me. The less time that you give your opponent to sort of get used to your timings and get used to like what's coming up, the more susceptible they are to your mix-ups, right? A little bit of patience, right? You're facing online, and online's always stupid aggressive. Like, for a long time, you're rarely gonna meet people who like you look at a person and you're gonna look at that guy and the person's gonna be like, I have never met a button that I did not like to press, right? Like, these people are just gonna press every button in existence. They'll like hold back to block for a little bit, and then they'll just be like, all right, nothing's happening, time to press some buttons. So be mindful of that, right? Be mindful of your opponent. Are they aggressive? Are they passive? Do they like to mash buttons a lot? Do they like to challenge me a lot? And start tailoring your offense to that, right? This Kazuya like to press every button in the book. So try to become a bit more familiar, and we'll talk about that with punishment and matchup knowledge stuff. Try to become a little bit more familiar as to what the Kazuya likes to do and adjust accordingly, right? So we'll talk other neutral aspects. We'll talk about like poking and stuff in my personal opinions. Next aspect of gameplay: punishment / matchup knowledge. If you just held back to block and you just move around a little bit and you just backdash, the Kazuya would have thrown everything at you and basically hung himself. He would have just constantly pressed punishable buttons, and Paul's punishment suite is easily one of the best in the game. Is it the absolute best? No. But when your opponent's just doing a bunch of like strings that don't jail and end in high, or doing a bunch of minus 12 moves, his back 1-2 is still one of the best 12 frame punishers in the game, right? And it's easy damage that you're going to be racking up. For every block down forward 2, that is 30 damage your opponent takes, right? And he used down forward 2 like as much as he wanted, right? So let's say you block 3 down forward 2s throughout the match and you punish each one with back 1-2. That's 90 damage that you just get for free because the opponent is just pressing buttons. So be mindful of that, right? When you know the opponent's just going to be pressing buttons and you have like a bit more familiarity with the character, just block, rein it in a little bit, let the opponent hang themselves by pressing all these punishable shit, and then just punish them, right? Now, what is punishable? That's the fun part, right? That is the $1 million question. My 2 cents, you go look up a Kazuya Punish Guide video. You just look for the popular moves that you see a lot. What are the strings that end in highs, and be ready to duck them in the future. And that's just kind of how it goes, right? I can talk more about punishing stuff later, but just look for popular moves that you see online. What is the punish for them? Practice it and be mindful and be ready for it. And then you constantly just build up that knowledge, right? It can be difficult due to a variety of factors we'll talk about in another time, but that's just kind of my 2 cents, right? Excuse me. Combos / Oki. I thought your combos were fine. I just think your Oki could use a bit more work, right? Like if your opponent's back is to the wall and they're waking up into a button, just press forward 1+2 or do side step 3 or other stuff. Yeah, it was not necessarily Oki, but just kind of like the timings and moments that you choose to do your mix-ups, you're not really maximizing the potential. You're not doing anything to condition your opponent. You're just kind of like, all right, let me do my mid. All right, that didn't work out. Let me do my low now, right? And you're not taking advantage of, oh, I did 3 mids in a row. This dude is just not ducking any of them. All right, let's do this. Here, or what's like another one? Oh, I can do a move that leaves me at -5 in crouch against my opponent. Or I can do a move that leaves me at +1. I can do a move that leaves me at +3 and the opponent is crouched, right? Stuff like that. So try to be more mindful of when I do my mix-up, what situation am I going to be left in, right? And congratulations, you're playing Tekken 7 Paul, so he has a bunch of moves that are just like, take my frame advantage, haha. I pressed the button and I'm plus, that's crazy. Or I'm safe, that's crazy, right? That's crazy. Abuse those, right? I really abuse those. Personal opinion stuff. Options that I think are neat, but your mileage may vary, right? Man, there's a lot. Oh man, this video's already way too long. God damn it. Be my Course will go back 4, Course will go back 4, Course will go back 2 are godlike buttons that you just get to press as much as you want, right? And you want to start practicing utilizing those because those are some of your best tools, right? And they are so annoying for the opponent to deal with. But more importantly, they're also easy traps to fall into. Like I myself still struggle with properly spacing core circle back 4. But the reason I still stress using that move is that you become more familiar with the range of that move, right? Like, again, this goes back to, cleaning up your inputs. If I do the fastest possible core circle back 4, what's my range that I got to work with? What am I really doing, right? And how is that going to go down? And become more familiar with that range so that you can kind of adjust it. Like, okay, my opponent's dashing in. They're going to be in range for the fucking Predator missile that is core circle back 4. Let me just press the button now. Or, okay, they're coming in, but if I press the button now, I don't think I'll reach. And that sort of knowledge about spacing and knowing like, all right, this is where it's going to work out, or this is where it's not going to work out, just really comes with practice and experience. So be sure to utilize that move a lot more. Nerfed or not, that move's like a fucking 23 damage, 27, whatever. It's a big ass counter hit launcher, and it's so disgusting. It's homing, high, knockdown, plus on block. It's so good. It's so good. Counter hit launcher. But obviously, if you just keep throwing out the move and just keep whiffing it, you'll die, right? Trust me. But you want to start utilizing it, so you start getting more familiar with it. You start practicing and knowing what are my limits. Where does it stop being effective? And so that way you know for future, like, okay, this is going to work out if I press course, I'll go back 4 here, or it's not going to work out. Course will go back 2. It's the I'm just gonna press my safe knockdown mid. Holy shit, the more I play with that move, the more I'm like, wow, this is fucking disgusting. Oh man, I fucking love that move. What else? Paul's throw game is pretty nice. I'd recommend it, but I feel like focus more on like the moves that again, it's about that risk reward and kind of like picture some scales in your head. When you do a move, where are the scales tipped? Who has to deal with the consequences of that move more, right? If the pressure is put on your opponent more to deal with that move, like they have to deal with a lot more than you do from simply pressing the move. Awesome. Abuse that move, right? Throws are a bit tricky. I think they're still valuable, and Paul's got some really strong throws. But obviously, you'll want to be able to like, oh, I can see the arms. And it's like, okay, obviously, it's going to be a bit more annoying to implement them. They're still useful, but that's another thing. But focusing more on the easier to implement buttons like course go back 4, course go back 2, course go forward 3, etc., etc., etc. So stuff like that. I really like back 4. Back 4 is really cool. And that counter hit's so good. And oh man, there's a lot. But that should be about it for now. I've rambled on for long enough. Yeah, at the end of the day, this is just my 2 cents, man. Right? It's just, one nerd who likes Paul to another, or Tekken player who likes Paul to another. If you have any questions, feel free to ask. And yeah, if you prefer a follow-up video about like, hey, what are some moves that you think I should be abusing a bit more? Or, hey, I actually have like a later match that I struggled with, or I actually adapted some of what you were already talking about. Can you please give feedback on that or something? Let me know. Yeah, cool.